Hey guys, what's going on? It's another weekend, it's another video. I hope you guys are having a good day. I know that last weekend I missed my video upload. That was because I was busy at work, because I have a job when I'm not doing these. So I was busy with that all week and I couldn't come up with any video ideas or have time to even shoot any of them, so I apologize for that. But this week we're getting back into it with a little something that I thought up a few days ago. So there's a lot of misconceptions in our world about our history, the foods we eat, the shows we watch, the science that we understand. Because information is like a big game of telephone, if you ever played that game. It's where you pass down information from one person to another down a line, and you see how the message has changed from where it started at the beginning of the line to the end of the line. And a lot of the misconceptions about our world are often passed down like that. So today I want to address some of the more curious misconceptions about the world, and so let's dive right in, shall we? So the first misconception I want to address is the pronunciation of sherbet. A lot of people have come to the conclusion that it is pronounced sherbet with a second R after the E. Now, no one really knows why this is. It might have something to do with us wanting to phonetically correct something in our minds, but that's not at all how it's pronounced. Working in an ice cream place that serves two different kinds of sherbet, I have noticed this so many times and I've wanted to call out so many people on it, but for some reason sherbet is pronounced with an extra R, making it sherbet by a lot of people, and no one really knows why that is. So, sherbet. Viking helmets. Now, when you think of Viking helmets, you think what? They usually have horns on them, right? Well, that's not entirely true, because you see, Viking helmets were meant to be worn in battle, obviously. They weren't just for decoration in fancy paintings and stuff. So, you think of Viking helmets, you think they've got the big horns on them. That's a tactical disadvantage for two reasons. The first reason being, it gives something that your enemy can grab onto. If you're wearing a helmet with horns on it, there's nothing stopping the guy on the other side army to just reach over, grab your helmet, yank it off your head, and make you vulnerable to attack. So, that's one reason. A second reason why Viking helmets didn't have horns on them is it's also a good target for swords, axes, other long-range weapons that could be used in case you didn't have the chance to get up close and grab a helmet off someone's head. So, by and large, Viking helmets, as we know them, are actually an invention of painters and artists who thought, you know what would make this a lot more cool? Horns on the helmets. If you know your history, you know about Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France following the French Revolution. Now, there are two major misconceptions about Bonaparte that a lot of us have fallen prey to. The first of all is that Bonaparte was short. That's not true at all. You see, the conception that Napoleon Bonaparte was short actually came from a British political cartoon depicting him as a shorter guy to sort of make fun of him. Actually, he was a pretty average height for Frenchmen of his time. In fact, he also had bodyguards that were actually taller than him, which might have also led to the conclusion that Bonaparte was actually a pretty short dude. The second misconception about Napoleon is that he was French. Full-blooded, born and raised in France. Napoleon was actually born on the island of Corsica about a few days before the French actually took control of it, which would have made him a French citizen, but by birth, he was Corsican. Get it right, guys. So martial arts, right? You know how in martial arts there are belts denoting different ranks. You got your green belt, your red belt, your brown belt, blue belt, and then eventually most of us know about the famous black belt. And the misconception here is that black belts indicate an expertise in your martial art, which is entirely false. Having a black belt does not per se make you a master of your martial art. It just means that you have reached a certain level in that skill. Now, the misconception about black belts, meaning that you're an expert in what you do, comes from how much training goes into working your way up through the ranks to get the black belt. Intense amount of concentration and focus on what you're doing, so it creates a sort of illusion to people who don't understand that much about martial arts that the black belt means that you're pretty much on the top level of your martial art. It just means that you've worked your way up to a certain point. Now, in this day and age, we've come to some pretty loose standards when it comes to the application of drugs their illegality or legality, and among these has come marijuana as a top contender. Now, another name for marijuana, in either jest or like in high-spiritedness, no pun intended, or was it, has been 420. Now, it's come to be believed that 420 is just a term for marijuana. It actually has a deeper meaning than that. 420 comes from California Police Code 420, which refers to a juvenile disturbance, which would make sense given how marijuana use at parties and stuff could get out of hand and the cops would have to get called in. So that's where 420 comes from, not just another fancy name for marijuana. Now, here in America, we celebrate our Independence Day from Britain on July 4th. Now, this has come to the conclusion in many people's minds that the Declaration of Independence was actually signed on July 4th, 1776. This is more or less sort of true. You see, the vote for independence was actually decided on July 2nd, and over the next 2 days after that, the wording of the Declaration was finalized, copied, and printed out and distributed throughout the now independent United States. The actual signing of the Declaration of Independence didn't actually occur until August 2nd, 1776. So if you want to interpret that as it is, you could really extend a celebration for independence all the way from July 2nd to August 2nd. I mean, you've got a pretty good month of fireworks, hot dogs, and beer to celebrate with that. When viewing the world from space, a lot of people say that the Great Wall of China is actually the largest structure that you can see from space. In fact, it's the only man-made object that you can see from space, which is not entirely true. Astronauts who have gone on spacewalks have claimed that the Great Wall of China is little more than a little blurry speck from where they can see it. So, not really that great. So Thomas Edison, the famed inventor who created many of the devices that we use today, actually took credit for a lot of other people's work from his invention factory in Menlo Park, New York. And while he did develop one of the first light bulbs, he did not develop the first practical one. In 1880, he devised a light bulb that used a carbonized bamboo filament to produce light. It wasn't until 1881 when an inventor named Joseph Swan improved upon the original Edison design by using cellulose instead of carbonized bamboo as the filament for a light bulb. In the original Bible story of Christmas, it is often misquoted that 3 wise men visited baby Jesus and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, we have often assumed it to be only 3 because only 3 gifts are mentioned, whereas in the Bible there is no specific mention of 3 wise men. So we might need to start correcting some of those nativity scenes pretty soon. Now, in ancient Egypt, hieroglyphs were... Alright, my bad, cut that too. Through archaeological discovery, we found out that the ancient Egyptians used hieroglyphs as a form of communication. While it was not the primary form of communication, it had several other functions, whereas now we believe that it was just used as the catch-all way of writing. Hieroglyphs were actually reserved for more specific functions, such as functions within the clergy, or to scribes, or to the royal house itself, because pharaohs were perceived as gods, and gods were served by the clergy, and the scribes wrote down everything the clergy said, so it was all a loop. Normal Egyptians didn't write in hieroglyphs, they instead used something called Demotic script, which was more of a broken down form of hieroglyphs in something similar to what we would today see as a cat scratch of shorthand. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the period of time known as the Salem witch trials, it was an era in the late 1600s where many people in and around the area of Salem, Massachusetts were accused of the crime of being witches or practicing witchcraft, associating with the devil, and all that wonderful stuff. They were put on trial to see if there was any actual proof that they were witches or had practiced witchcraft or had been in communion with the devil at any point. And the common misconception here is that those who were found guilty of being witches or practicing witchcraft were burned at the stake. This was a practice more commonly used by the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects them. While in reality, many of the victims of the Salem witch trials were either hanged by the neck or simply died in prison. Either way, it's gruesome and bad all around. So, in the 1930s, when radio was the common way of communicating across the country quickly, and there was no way of visually proving anything except in the newspapers that would come out the day after a radio broadcast, Orson Welles, a radio producer for a drama group known as the Mercury Theater on the Air, dramatized a book about a fictional Martian invasion of Earth known as The War of the Worlds by an author named H.G. Wells. No relation. Now, the misconception here is that those who tuned in after it was announced that this was simply a dramatization of the War of the Worlds believed that an actual Martian invasion of the United States was going on, and this eventually led to a mass panic. The truth is that not all that many people actually reported in that they believed that a Martian invasion was happening. The next day, the newspaper simply blew up the story, thinking that would be interesting. Pranks gone too far, I tell you. Pranks going too far. So a word that's found its way into our modern vernacular is the word crap, which we often come to think of as meaning human poop or another ruder way of saying it. Now, this word actually has no connection to human poop. It actually comes from the medieval Latin word crappa, which is actually translated as chaff. Now, if you don't know what chaff is, it is a useless bit of a wheat stalk that is ground off and tossed into the wind during wheat harvesting. Some have also speculated that the word comes from the plumbing renovator Thomas Crapper from the 1800s. However, this has no connection. If you're a foodie or anyone who has common knowledge of the food industry, you'll have no doubt heard of the myths about the Twinkie and its supposed long shelf life. The actual shelf life for a Twinkie is only 45 days, and so that would not actually be a good choice of food to hold you over should the apocalypse come and you need to find something that has a long shelf life. And last but not least, there's a misconception about how facial hair grows. It's said that facial hair can grow back more quickly and thicker if it's shaved more often. This hasn't been proven before and it has no actual way of being validated. Hair will grow as it grows or doesn't grow, so sorry, you can't make your beard better if you shave it more often. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. I learned a few things myself. Pretty interesting stuff. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel. Videos every weekend. I know that this wasn't exactly the most interesting thing, but going forward there are going to be more interesting videos coming out every weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. So I will see you guys next weekend with something. See ya.